Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be making compost tea. I'm going to show you how I make my compost tea and how I fertilize my plants outside. I am starting this on Wednesday, April the 1st, and you won't actually see this till after I fertilized, which will be on Sunday. And the reason I'm doing that is because I let this sit in a half-sized gallon mason jar, or whatever you call this, ball jar, for 4 days before I actually use it, because that allows it to ferment and steep inside of the water so that I know my plants are getting the full nutrients that the plants offer. The stuff that I'm going to be using to make my compost gets the full nutrients that it offers. So just to show you what I am using dried banana stem. This I just come and pulled it from outside, brought it inside and put it in a bowl. I'm using banana leaves that I harvested last November. So this past year in November, I harvested these and I froze them in my freezer. So they're just going to be kind of icky and stuff. And then I'm also using eggshells. The eggshells did come from my chickens, and I don't wash them or anything like that. I do throw them in the oven for about 30 minutes to let them dry down, but that's about all that I do. The reason that I am using each item that I'm using is the one on the eggshells. I'm using eggshells because they're high in calcium, which really helps with blossom end rot, and then also provides extra nutrients to plants like tomatoes and things like and peppers that really need that to prevent that blossom end rot and any calcium intake they may need. The and oh, and eggshells also provides phosphorus and magnesium as well, but they provide that in low doses. Calcium is the highest thing in the eggshells. On as far as the banana leaves, the high ingredient in those is going to be potassium, which really benefits like your potatoes and things like that. But it also helps with magnesium, phosphorus, and sulfur on the banana leaf side. So those are giving back to my soil, which it does lack some. I have had my soil tested, and I know it does lack in potassium some. So that's what I'm really focusing on trying to build is my potassium and calcium, because my trying to focus on building up my soil, and this is one way that I'm doing this. I have made compost tea in the past before, and I have used it and got great success on my garden. So that's why, again, going with my organic feel or my organic take on this year, and not using pesticides, or really trying to stay away from your manufactured or your chemical based fertilizers, and I'm just trying to do that all natural take. So what I'm going to do is I've got the eggshells were dried, and the banana and the leaves and stuff are down in here. I'm going to take this, add it to my blender that I have here, and I'm going to blend this down. Try to get you to. So I'm going to blend this down with just a little bit of water. And then I have some water that is currently on my stove in a tea kettle that's heating up. It's not heating up to a boiling point. It's getting just a little warm, so that when I pour it on top of here, it doesn't break my glass or anything. But it also has enough heat to it to where the leaves and everything that's grinded down can steep in it. So I'm going to go ahead and add this in here. Alrighty, so as you can see, I put the spent banana leaves, or the banana leaves I harvested last year, and then the dried banana leaves from the dead plant outside, and then the eggshells in the blender. If you want to, after you dry the eggshells, you can crush them down in a spice grinder to get them powdery. I don't do that. I just grind them down in here to make it all easy peasy and simple. So I put those in here, and then I just added the warm water slowly into here as I blended it down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer it over to this, and then I will top it off with the rest of the warm water until it fills all the way up to the top. And then I'll close the lid over and just set it in a cool, dark place until Sunday. And then on Sunday, as I'm fertilizing, I'll bring you back and show you how I do that. And today, I'm going to take you on a walk with me to fertilize my garden. This weekend is the weekend I set to fertilize with my homemade fertilizer. I do use organic water soluble fertilizers. I also use organic granular fertilizers. What I do is when I first put the beds in, I put in a granulated or granular fertilizer along the top layer, the top inch or two of the beds of each one of them before I planted anything in them. And I did that probably about a month and a half before I actually planted into the beds. And then since then, I have been alternating between um, the homemade compost tea that I'm about to use and also my water soluble fertilizer. Now, this homemade compost tea, I only use it once every other month, just because I only fertilize every 2 to 3 weeks. So that gives me about once every other month with this, and then once every other month with the water soluble fertilizer. Now, just so you know, when I do plant and I actually put plants into the ground, I add um, worm castings and a granular fertilizer in the bottom of each hole as I'm planting, just to give them that uh, extra boost, extra boost that they need. Because by the time what is already in the bed starts to break down and feed them, uh, that'll feed them for a while. That'll give time for the ones that I'm putting in the hole underneath the roots. That'll give it time for those to break down. And in the interim, I give them a dose of the compost tea that I have right here that we made together, and then also a dose of a water soluble fertilizer. And I believe I'll have to find the name of the water soluble fertilizer that I use. I have the bag, but it's way off over there, so I'll go get it. If if it doesn't rain before I finish with this, or if it doesn't rain and I finish with putting this out, I'll get the bag and show you the name of the water soluble fertilizer. But until then, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to use this. Now, what this jar will do, this will actually give me a low dose of compost tea fertilizer, and I will get two bugs everywhere right now. Sorry, little flies and gnats and stuff are everywhere right now. It's like 80 some degrees and the rain's about to hit. I will get two 5-gallon buckets of water fertilizer with this out of this jar. So, and I'm doing this right before it rains because, to be honest, it's best to fertilize right before a light rain, not a heavy rain, because you don't want the heavy rain to just wash away what you've already put into the soil. You want a nice light consistent rain, that way it washes it down into the roots for the plants, and that way they get all the nutrients from what you're giving them. So I'm going to bring you along as I strain out the bits and pieces that are in here, because we did blend this together in the blender. So there are bits of um, what is in here? There are bits of uh, banana leaves, banana dried stalk, and then also bits of egg shells that are up in here. So I'm gonna have to drain those out because I just want to use the water that's been kind of sitting in this. So I'm gonna bring you along as I do that, and then we'll fill up our 5-gallon bucket with our first batch, and then I'll bring you along as I'm fertilizing. Alrighty, so to give you an idea of what it currently looks like, this is the current inside of the jar that I'm going to be using. And down in the bottom of this bucket, I actually have some rainwater that I've collected, and it's got a leaf and a bug in there. And it has some other bits down in the bottom, but I'm not worried about that. So I'm going to drain. I try to use as much rainwater as I possibly can. I don't have a lot of rainwater right at this moment, so I'll be substituting with just some hose water. And let me get the jar strainer ready. Alrighty, to drain it, I'm just using a little kitchen towel. You can use the cheesecloth, something like that, to strain it out. I'm just using this because it's real thin and it'll work great for what I need it. So this is all I'm doing, and I'm just straining it into my bucket. And what I'll do is I will put about half into this bucket, and then the other half of the jar will go into the next bucket, and that will be enough for a diluted fertilizer for my garden. So 2 5-gallon buckets. I just do a quick once over with this to do it real diluted, and just get it sprinkled over the plants, because this is more of a foliar feed, I guess you could say, and for the soil. So it'll just kind of drain down to the soil. All right. Okay, that's gonna go back. All right. Okay, so that's done. Alrighty, that's done. Okay. Alrighty, everyone, that is it for fertilizing before the rain hits with the compost tea that I made. As you noticed in the video, not everything got fertilized with the compost tea that I made, just because just because this compost tea was more specified on flowering plants that make fruit, like my peppers, tomatoes, and then also plants like my potatoes that need the extra potassium. Um, yeah, the extra potassium and the phosphorus and all that stuff. So that's more of what I focus my areas on in planting, especially the ones I'm not planting. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to get this done so before it rains. So, but that's more of what I focused on as far as getting fertilized. I did a little bit on my squash and my pumpkins and my watermelons and my cucumbers and stuff like that. I did sprinkle them some with the compost fertilizer, but I do make a different one that that is directly for them and what their needs are. And as the season goes on, I'll show you that, because I actually do, I want to say probably three separate ones. I do one for flowers, one for my cucurbits and stuff, melons, one for my potatoes, peppers, and tomatoes. And technically, you could incorporate all of the ingredients that I'm going to be using on the three different ones, in the three different compost teas. You can incorporate it, put it in a maybe a 3 gallon bucket, and fertilize everything with it. I just choose not to do that, just because it's easier for me to keep it separated, and I have it on set on a schedule on my phone. The only thing that I really do not fertilize, it gets the granular fertilizer that I put into the beds, and then it gets this little dose of fertilizer of fish emulsion fertilizer when I put it into the ground. That is it. The only that plant is okra. For me, okra does not do well if I had heavy fertilize it very well, especially on a regiment. It does not do well at all. Okra in my area survives and thrives in in low fertile soil, in low fertile soil. So this bed back here that I have the okra in, it is actually this wooden bed right here. I have my okra in there because that has just all of the soil, the old soil that was in my wooden beds that were over on this area, like all throughout here. That's all of the soil that has composted down over the years. And this is in ground soil for my ground, uh, raised bed mix, compost. All of it's just kind of mixed in together in this bed. Like I said, this has been years of soil kind of composting down and mixing together. So that's what's all in this bed. So the fertility in this bed, or the the or not ingredients, but uh the what do you say, the oh my gosh, I can't think straight right now. The nutrients that are available to the plants in this bed, I'm not 100 for sure of what they are, but I can tell that they do lack in nutrients just because since I planted my okra, they have bounced up like two times bigger than what they actually was a week ago, and several of them already have new leaves after that. So I know this bed lacks in nutrients, and that's one of the reasons I've been consistently giving fertilizer to the onions that are in here, and that's it. And then the cabbages that were in here lacked just a little bit, so I had to constantly fertilize them as well before we pulled them out. But I do know, like I said, these okra in this bed are just going to do great. So, with that being said, just so you see, this is what is left over of my compost tea. I know it doesn't look too great, but it actually smells earthy, like banana leaves and eggshells and stuff. So it's not, there's nothing wrong with this. This and the other little bunch that I have down there, I will take these to my compost bin and throw them in there for them to compost down even further. And that will be it for that until it's time for me to make the next batch. And then the next batch for plants that will need to be fertilized will be my cucurbits, which will be my melons, cucumbers, squash, things like that. And I'll bring you along when I do that compost tea. But I do believe in the interim. Oh, oh, y'all, I'm so sorry. There's like a little bitty uh, hummingbird that was right here, but now it's going over there to eat out of that hummingbird feeder. I have a hummingbird feeder right here, and it likes eating out of that one for some reason. But I guess since I'm down here filming, it was like, no, I don't want to eat out of that one. So it just sat on the fence staring at me like it was watching me make this video. So, but it's up there now eating out of that hummingbird feeder, and it comes every day and visits me. But anyway, squirrel. Anyway, so I'll bring you along on the next time that I put a compost tea together. It's very easy and simple, using things around your house, something that you would normally take, put in a compost bin, and some people even just throw it in the trash. You can easily make a compost tea out of that and have free fertilizer for your plants. The only thing is, like I said, I just highly recommend using rainwater as opposed to um, hose water or stuff, just because rainwater is a little more natural and it gives more nutrients to the plants, especially if it is lightning while it's raining. It does add a bit of, I believe it's nitrogen. I want to say it's nitrogen, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll put it on the screen what it is. But it does give a certain nutrient to the rain when it's lightning. So that's when the best time I like to collect the rainwater is when it's lightning. It gives that extra nutrient, and I try to get all that rainwater that I can. But in this case, I did not have the rainwater. So since I didn't have the rainwater, I used hose water, just, well, a little bit of rainwater and the rest hose water to get done what I needed to get done before the rain came. And it is, like I said, it is set to sprinkle this afternoon or have a nice consistent rain. And this was the perfect time for me to go ahead and get my garden fertilized. And when the rain comes, it'll wash it down into the roots and feed my plants, and they'll be happy and healthy and great for another week. So, and then I'll bring you back in. Today is today Sunday. I'll bring you back in about 2 to 3 weeks on my next scheduled fertilizer. I will actually be using the water soluble fertilizer. So when I'm using that, I'll bring you back with you, show you how I do that, because it's really plain and easy and simple. It's only a tablespoon per 2 gallon jug that I have. And I dilute my stuff just because there's already so many nutrients in the ground. I've already added so much granular fertilizer to the plants, and I don't want to risk over fertilizing my plants because that is a thing. I found that out the hard way a couple of years ago. You can over fertilize your plants and that will kill them too. So, just like you can under fertilize, you can over fertilize, and both will kill them. And if you over fertilize, what will happen is the roots won't be able to retain all those nutrients, and they'll end up dying back on themselves. And it's just, it breaks your heart because you're like, well, I've been fertilizing, I've done this and I've done that. And in the end, you come to find out you've fertilized too much. It has too much in there. So, and then you can also really harm your plants by having too much of one nutrient as opposed to not having a nice balance of them. And that's what I'm aiming for this year, is just to get that nice balance into my garden and have that consistently throughout my garden and to maintain that balance. So again, if you're interested in following along with me on this journey, please hit that subscribe button. I appreciate everyone that has already subscribed. And if you're, like I said, just come follow along with me on this journey of mine to make my garden 100% organic. Well, not 100%, not 100% organic, but as organic as we can possibly be. And just live life, I guess you could say, because the next couple videos that I'll have coming out really won't have much to do with the garden unless I'm fertilizing. I'm going to focus more on my animals because it is time to start eggs for incubation. It's time to get my brooder set up. It's time to set up my new areas for my chickens to be let out, because right now I'm just letting them out in free range wherever they want to go. But as it gets warmer, coyotes, things like that, coyotes, raccoons, possums, all those things that like to eat chickens, they will come and start attacking my flock. So I don't want to have them out running around everywhere. I'm going to give them a little bit of space to run into, especially during the day, because right now I just let them out when I'm out here. And I don't like doing that. I like to have them out running around doing their own thing throughout the day when I'm not out here. So the easiest way to do that is to build them a little bit of an enclosed run, mostly just with fencing around, have it enclosed so they can go out during the day. I can open the gate, let them out into that little area. They're focused in that area, and then they can have the safety of their pen to get back into if something comes, and it'll close down. And because also here we have hawks that are just horrible. So, but anyway, I'm starting to ramble. So, since I'm starting to ramble, I'm going to go ahead and get off of here, let y'all go. Again, if you're interested on following me on this journey, I invite you to subscribe. And I just thank you for your time. Hope you had a happy Easter and you have a good one. From my garden to yours, happy garden.